History is full of rulers who became legends, both for their greatness and for their cruelty. But few names spark as much curiosity and fear as Nero, the Roman emperor often remembered as the mad tyrant who burned his own capital city and murdered his family without mercy. But here's the question that keeps historians debating even today. Was Nero truly the monster that history books describe? Or was he simply the victim of rumors, propaganda, and enemies who wanted his legacy destroyed? Let's dig into the story of Nero, Rome's most infamous emperor, to see the truth behind the legend. Nero wasn't supposed to be emperor. When he was born in 37 AD, nobody thought this little boy named Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus would one day rule the world's most powerful empire. Rome already had a ruler, Emperor Caligula, and later Claudius. Nero was just part of a complicated noble family. His mother, Agrippina the Younger, however, had ambition running through her veins. She was determined to see her son rise to power, no matter the cost. Through careful marriages, alliances, and political moves, Agrippina managed to convince Emperor Claudius, her own uncle by the way, to adopt Nero as his son. This meant that young Nero suddenly jumped to the front of the line for the throne. When Claudius mysteriously died in 54 AD, many suspected Agrippina poisoned him. Nero, just 16 years old, became emperor. Imagine that, a teenager suddenly ruling the greatest empire on earth. Surprisingly, Nero's early years as emperor weren't bad at all. In fact, some historians say they were among Rome's most peaceful and prosperous times. Why? Because Nero wasn't really ruling alone. He had guidance from smart advisors like the philosopher Seneca and the commander Burrus. Under their influence, Nero lowered taxes, gave power back to the Senate, and even promoted arts and culture. People actually liked him at first. He was young, charming, and had a passion for music and theater. He loved performing on stage, playing the lyre, and even acting, though for a Roman emperor, this was considered scandalous. Still, Rome seemed stable. If Nero had continued down this path, maybe history would remember him as one of the good emperors. But then, things began to change. The problem with power is that it often reveals the darkest parts of someone's soul. And in Nero's case, once he started making decisions on his own, the peaceful golden age began to fade. His mother, Agrippina, who had helped him rise to power, started becoming a problem. She wanted to control him, to act as the real power behind the throne. At first, Nero listened, but as he grew older, he wanted freedom. Their relationship became toxic. Eventually, Nero decided to break free in the most brutal way, by ordering his mother's death. According to Roman writers, Nero first tried to kill her in creative ways, like building a collapsible boat that would sink with her on it. But Agrippina survived the accident and swam back to shore. Finally, Nero sent soldiers to her villa to finish the job. Agrippina, realizing what was about to happen, told the assassin, "Strike me in the womb, for that bore such a son." It was a chilling start to Nero's darker years. After his mother's death, Nero's rule turned increasingly violent. He grew paranoid, thinking everyone wanted his throne. Soon, more family members and rivals mysteriously died, often accused of plotting against him. His own wife, Octavia, was executed after he accused her of treason, though most historians believe she was innocent. Then came Poppaea Sabina, Nero's mistress and later wife. She was beautiful, ambitious, and said to influence Nero greatly. But their relationship was filled with jealousy and rage. Ancient sources claim that during one argument, Nero kicked her while she was pregnant, causing her death. By now, Nero's reputation was stained with blood, and yet the worst was still to come. In July of 64 AD, disaster struck. A massive fire broke out in Rome and burned for 6 days straight. Entire districts were reduced to ashes. Thousands of people lost their homes, and panic filled the city. So where was Nero during all of this? Ancient writers like Tacitus and Suetonius claim that Nero watched the flames from his palace, playing his lyre and singing about the destruction of Troy. That's where the infamous image of Nero fiddling while Rome burned comes from. But here's the twist. Modern historians think this story might not be true. First of all, fiddles didn't even exist in Nero's time. And according to other reports, Nero wasn't in Rome when the fire started. When he returned, he actually opened his gardens to shelter the homeless and organized food supplies for the victims. So why the rumor? Well, Nero later used the burnt land to build his extravagant Golden House, a massive palace decorated with jewels and even an artificial lake. This made people suspect he started the fire on purpose. To defend himself, Nero blamed the Christians, a small and unpopular religious group at the time. He accused them of setting the fire and ordered horrific punishments, burning them alive, throwing them to wild animals, or crucifying them. This was one of the first great persecutions of Christians in history, and it permanently marked Nero as a villain in their writings. The more Rome expected Nero to act like a ruler, the more he wanted to be an artist. He loved music, theater, and poetry. But he didn't just enjoy them privately, he wanted to perform publicly. Imagine the leader of the world's most powerful empire stepping on stage in costume, competing in singing contests, and acting in plays. For the Roman elite, this was shocking. Performing was considered beneath an emperor's dignity, but Nero didn't care. He even traveled to Greece to join their Olympic-style games, where, of course, he declared himself the winner in almost every category. To ordinary citizens, it was entertaining, but to Rome's senators and generals, it was humiliating. They began to see Nero not as a leader, but as a clown. By 68 AD, Rome had had enough. Rebellions broke out across the empire. Generals who once swore loyalty now turned against him. The Senate, tired of his behavior, declared him a public enemy. When Nero realized his power was gone, he fled Rome. Only a few loyal servants followed him. He begged them to kill him, but none had the heart. In the end, Nero took his own life, whispering, "What an artist dies in me." He was just 30 years old. With his death, the Julio-Claudian dynasty, the family of Julius Caesar and Augustus, came to an end. So here's the big question. Was Nero truly the monster history paints him to be? Some of the most famous stories about him, like playing the fiddle during the fire, are likely exaggerations or outright lies. Much of what we know about Nero comes from historians who hated him or from Christian writers who saw him as the first great persecutor of their faith. It's possible Nero wasn't pure evil, but rather a deeply flawed man, young, insecure, controlled by passions, and often making reckless choices. Yes, he killed family members. Yes, he persecuted Christians. Yes, he spent huge amounts of money on his pleasures while the empire struggled. But was he insane? Was he truly worse than other emperors? That's still debated today. In the end, Nero remains one of history's most fascinating figures. Some see him as a monster who destroyed everything in his path. Others see him as a tragic soul, more interested in art than politics, destroyed by the weight of power and the hatred of his enemies. What's certain is this: the legend of Nero will never die. He will always be remembered as the emperor who might have been a leader, but instead became a symbol of madness.